Parade Magazine came out with a story that really touches my heart, and you're going to love it, I think, because it gets to this idea of identification. We all get fearful of things, and we all have a lot to worry about, do we not? We know that there's nothing that worry can solve. Worry has never solved a problem. We know this in the New Thought belief system. But Parade came out and said this, you know, human beings are really good at a lot of things. They're good at maybe playing the piano. They're good at typing. And they're very good at inventing stuff. But one thing that human beings are not so good at is assessing risk. And so people are always worrying about this or worrying about that. And so they decided to say this in this Parade magazine. They said, you know, what we ought to do is look at history, because we can learn from history. We need to look at past unsolvable situations in humanity where people felt it cannot be cured and where people really worry about it. And so they dealt with something very special to the heart of everybody during the 1900s. Because during the 1900s, it was a little different than this day. And what they dealt with was horse manure. Now I'm bringing this up for a particular reason. Horse manure. Have you thought about this yet? In the I have a horse lady here, so don't throw rocks at me, it's going to work out okay. In the 1900s, these urban communities started really exploding with people. People started really gravitating. So in New York City, we'll use New York City as an example, they used horses to do just about everything. To pull carriages, to take, it's like a train, a mobile train, to pull equipment. Is that not correct? That's pretty much true in the 1900s. Well, also, what they didn't realize is that in the 1900s, New York City had 200,000 horses. Think about this now. There was one horse for every 17 people. Now, I don't know why I'm doing this to myself. Now, and the people, the economists said this, well, there are a lot of negative externalities that occur when we're using 200,000 horses to do our work. And some of that is noise. Some of it is the insurance claims get higher because people do have accidents. And gridlock. Well, we experience this all the time in politics. So it relates, doesn't it? Okay, but the worst problem is horse manure. Do you realize that every horse produces 24 pounds of horse manure every day? Ooh. Yes! Ooh. Is that true? I hope so. New York City ended up with 5 million pounds of horse manure every day. Now that's something to worry about. And so the prince, and I'm going to make a point here. But, so anyway, they had horse manure, and I was in Spokane, Washington when it was really snowy. You'd have snow. In fact, we used to have to put flags at the top of our antennas so people would know when you come to a crosswalk, you know, hey, there's a car there, there's an antenna there. Well, they had more horse manure piled that high, and some vacant lots as high as 60 feet. Think about this. That's a lot of horse manure. Well, and people worried about it, and they wrung their hands, and one economist said, my God, what are we going to do? This is unsolvable. We can't live with the horses, but we can't live without them. Well, then what happened to it? It disappeared. It's gone. What happened? The electric car came into existence. So the problem resolved. I guess the point here, why I'm mentioning this particular story, is kind of fun, but it also gives us a metaphor, an idea that when we start worrying about anything, and I'm going to use this a lot, when we worry about anything, we need to remember this story about New York City in 1900s and realize that what I'm worrying about is nothing more than, say it, horse manure. You like it? Let's clap for horse manure. That worked out okay. We've heard stories and we know that which we focus on, we become. Would you accept that? That which we worry about, also we become. You know? And looking back on my path, and it's been a long time, My unique path, I have a lot of times that I've worried about it, but when you look back and review what you've done in the past and what you worried about, what happens? It's all resolved. Regardless of my worrying about it or my wringing of my hands or whatever, that it's all resolved ultimately, and in spite of how we treated it or how we produced it. So the idea on that is, we have many stories about this identification. The lady, and some of you know the story, the lady who kept telling her co-worker, she's a hard-working gal, and she says, someday people are going to start waiting on me. They're going to serve me hand and foot, and all I need to do is say, I want, and they'll be there to help me out. Well, what happens with God? She embodied that. It became her mantra, and so what happened to her? Do you remember what happened to her? She had a stroke. She had a stroke, and she ended up in bed, and she could only, and her voice never came back, and all she could say was, I want, I want. Did she create this in her life? Think about it. And so people would have to come to her, and she had all these people waiting on her, and they'd have to show her pictures so they can determine what is it that she wants. There are other stories that we can say in blockage. One where the person's health and wealth was blocked. I mean, and she was a new thoughter too, and she did prayer treatment, and she did all these things. And she kept experiencing lack. Why is this happening to me? Well, the ministers had her, they were talking to ministers and practitioners, and she said, well, I'm on a fixed income. I'm on a fixed income. And so I need this stuff. You're on a fixed income. You're telling the universe, this divine guardian who loves you so much and provides all your needs before you even know you have a need, you're telling them that you're on a fixed income, so that's what you're experiencing right here and right now. We are in this idea of must-dos. How many of you are in the idea of must-dos? I get into the must-dos. I also get to the must-haves. We do it here at this church. We have a nice crowd here, so thank you. But I get into this thing where I treat for spirit that the place is overflowing with folks. That I must have a large crowd because I like that when I'm giving a talk, but I must have the large crowd that will help us pay for the lease. Those are the must-haves. I must do this, I must do that. I must have more money to pay my bills. And so we're relegating the divine guardian that we have to things, to stuff, when it's really consciousness. So I came up with something this morning, which I kind of like. As you know, I'm an egotist when it comes to my own stuff. That the must-haves, the musties are the misties in our life. Oh, you might say, what the heck does that mean? You know what a mist is, isn't it? Well, the musties create this fog. It gets in our way of our vision. It clouds our vision entirely, and it disconnects us from that life stream that we call the divine guardian. It disconnects us entirely. So it puts us in a position of being separated from that which we are in consciousness only. We can never be separated from that. And the other thing, and then we're going to move on because we need to do this exercise. The other thing that we do in this idea of identification is develop patterns of behavior. Do you think we develop patterns of behavior? Absolutely. I know I do. And the patterns of behavior will creep up to us as we're experiencing this life force. And we wonder, why in the heck did I do that? Why did I act this way? Why am I not producing my abundance here? Why? Well, we may have a pattern of behavior that we've accepted early on in life. When we're younger, we haven't developed the conditioned mind yet. That's the ego type that judges and evaluates. So we're pure light. We come here as pure light. And so when mommy or daddy or the teacher says, you're not worthwhile, you're not worthy of this, we assume that is absolutely correct. So what do? So when we are looking for a job or we're trying to experience abundance, that's embedded in the divine guardian in our subconscious mind that I'm not worthy. So if we're not experiencing abundance, we need to think about that.